Hello and welcome to Pixel Magic Tutorials. I am your host Geekman, and today we're going to learn how to create a photo zoom pixelation type effect in Photoshop. Now, a couple of assumptions that I need to get out of the way right off the bat. Number one, I am using Photoshop CC 2017. If you're using an earlier version of Photoshop, some of the effects may not work as expected. Second, I am using Windows. So if you're using a Mac, when I say hit the Control key on the keyboard, that means hit the Command key. And when I say hit the Alt key on the keyboard, that means hit the Option key. So with all of that out of the way, let's get started by hitting Control N on the keyboard to bring up the new image dialog box. And you can name this anything that you want. I'll just call this pixel zoom effect because I don't have a better name for it. And the width is going to be 3,840 pixels, height of 2,160 pixels, resolution of 150 pixels per inch, color mode RGB 8-bit, background contents don't matter. Color profile is Adobe RGB 1998, and we're using square pixels. Hit create, and we now have an image upon which we can put the photo that we want to apply the explosion photo zoom pixelation effect to. Okay, so I have a photo that I've gotten online for free. I have a link in the description below where you can download the same image, or feel free to use whatever image you want. Okay, so let me bring in this image here, and I just clicked and dragged it in. Now I have an option up here under Photoshop Preferences, which I can't get to right now, which will automatically turn any image that I bring into Photoshop into a smart object, okay, which makes it very easy for me and the work that I do. And there's an option I'll show you in just a moment. Now, you want to resize your image, whatever it is, so that your subject fills the screen as large as possible. So I'm going to hold down Shift and Alt and grab a corner and make this guy's face nice and big like so. And then I'm going to center him in the middle of my image like so. Hit OK, and I now have my guy centered. Okay, now the option that I was talking about is found up here under Preferences, and you go to General. Okay, and always create smart objects when placing. Okay, and I've got that checked, so when I drag in something, it automatically turns it into a smart object. Now, if you don't have a smart object, you just want to right-click on your layer, and you want to convert to a smart object, and then you will have this little icon down here, and that means that your layer is a smart object, which is what you want for this effect. Now, you don't need it specifically. I like to have it as a smart object in case I need to go back and change something later that I might not be able to with when I'm working directly with the image itself. Okay, so let's go here to background, and we can just throw that away. We don't need it. And now all that we have is our image nice and big, our photo nice and big on our image, and we want to make a total of 5 copies of this layer. So we want to make 4 copies right now by selecting the layer and then hitting Control J 4 times to have 5 layers. 1, 2, 3, 4, and 5. And then we want to rename these layers like so. We want to name the topmost one large. Then we want to go medium. Whoop, I got to spell correctly. Medium, small, surprise. This one here, the second from the bottom, is going to be multiply. And the bottommost one here is going to be, whoops, Control A, is going to be radial blur. Okay, so now we've got radial blur on the bottom, multiply, small, medium, and large. Let's hide everything except for radial blur. Make sure that you have that selected. Okay, and then what we're going to do, we're going to zoom out a little bit from our image, because what we need to do is you need to make this image about 25 to 30% larger than it is at the moment. Okay, so we're going to hit Control T on the keyboard, then we're going to hold down Shift and Alt and grab a corner, and we're going to make it about 25 to 30% larger than it was. Okay, and then just recenter it so it looks kind of cool like so. Hit enter, and then if I turn on the multiply layer, you'll see that it is about 25% to 30% larger than the multiply layer. Okay, now what we're going to do is give it a radial blur, but it's not really going to be a radial blur. It's more like a zoom blur. Okay, so now we're done with that. We're going to go to radial blur here. We're going to go up to filter, blur, and we're going to go to radial blur. But instead of being a radial blur, we're going to use the zoom blur. Okay, so the amount is going to be 100. The blur method is going to be zoom. Quality, you want it to be best. And then the center point, just make sure that that center point is on the center of your actual photo. So for example, if you had a photo where this guy's face was off to the right and his hair was all to the left, you would want the zoom to be on the right. Okay, so that the zoom is more towards the subject's the image's most important subject. All right, but since mine is in the center, I'm just going to leave this in the center like so. I'm going to hit OK, and we're going to let Photoshop do its little dance. And when it's done, we'll have a very, very blurry zoom blur on this guy's larger face, like so. Then we want to just open up multiply here, turn that on. All right, and what we're going to do is we're going to turn this into a layer mode of multiply. So we're going to go here to multiply, and then we're going to change its opacity to 90%. And the reason why we did that is to darken the image. Now, don't ignore the fact that he's got two noses and, you know, two sets of teeth and a mouth and two chins. Ignore all that. That's not important at this point. All that this layer is doing is making sure that it goes from a bright image to a darker image. And that's because I personally like the look of this on a darker image. All right. So that's all that we need to do. So multiply and radial blur are now done. And what we're going to do now is we're going to add a layer above multiply that will give us a vignette. So let's go down here by adding a curves adjustment layer above multiply. So here's our curves one. It's above multiply. And we're just going to grab the curve and bring it down to about 1/3 of the way from the bottom. That's all that you have to do there. Then you're going to go to the mask portion of curves, and we're going to change the feather to 175. Once you've done that, you're going to make sure that you select the curves layer mask. Okay, see how dark that is? We don't want it that dark. We just want the edges dark, not the center. So we're going to select the curves mask, and we're going to go over here to our marquee tool, and we're going to select the elliptical marquee tool. Okay, make sure that you're on feather 0, anti-alias can be checked, style is going to be normal, and you're just going to draw a big ellipse like so. And then you're going to center that ellipse on your image like so, centered, and then you're going to fill that with black like so by hitting Control and Backspace if you have black and white as your foreground and background. Okay, if black is your background, Control and Backspace will fill it with black, as you can see. And now you can see the center of his face, but you don't really see the outermost edges as well as you did. We can hide that. So I've zoomed back in, so now you can see it a lot better. All right, so that's all that we've done there. So you can go from this to this, okay? The next thing that we're going to do is we're going to start adding in the pixelation effect. And the way that we do that is by using the rectangular marquee tool, filling it with a color, and then moving that color square and duplicating it until we get a nice look. Let me show you how this works. We're going to start with the large one first. So we're going to go up here, turn on the large layer so you can see the full photo once again. Okay, and then what we're going to do is select our marquee tool, M on the keyboard, right? And if you're still on the elliptical marquee, you can hold down Shift and M, and that will switch over to the rectangular, or you can just click over here and select rectangular marquee tool, whichever one you like. Make sure that you're on a new selection. You want feather to be 0, style is fixed size, and what we're going to do is we're going to make the width here is going to be 200, and the height is going to be 500. Okay, then click anywhere here on your image to make a selection of the size that we specified up here. And then we're going to fill that with whatever color we want. What you have to do, is create a brand new layer above your large layer. Okay, and then you just want to hit Alt and Backspace or Control and Backspace, whatever you want, to fill it with whatever color you happen to have. It doesn't make a difference. Then hit Control D to deselect. And then you have this color box. Then what you're going to do is select your Move tool. And what you want to do is you want to select Auto Select and Layer, okay, on your Move tool options. And that will allow you to move this, okay? And then you can hold down Alt and move it again, and it will duplicate it. And the reason that we have auto select and layer is you can then go back and select the first layer and start making copies of that or this one. And it makes it easier to move things around as we add more of these rectangles. So what we're looking to do with this is we want to find the most important parts of our photo that we're going to cover with these boxes. So I see his eye here, to me, is one of the most important parts of this image. So I'm going to cover his eye like so. Then I definitely want his other eye, but I don't want to keep it on par with this one. I want this one to be a little bit higher. And let's move it out a little bit more like so. Okay, let's move this guy in. See, and I can move this around now because I have the auto select and layer there. Okay, so once I've got those two there, I'm just going to hold down Alt. I'm going to left click and I'm going to drag out another piece here. And I'm going to give his nose some love, just like that. And then I'm going to go down here to his mouth because his mouth is very, very important here. And with these large rectangles, you don't really want them to overlap. So I'm going to do this guy here and I'm going to let go of Alt and I'm just going to click and drag this nose one up a little bit higher and drag this guy here up a little bit higher. And then I'm going to grab the mouth one here. I'm going to hold down Alt again to make a duplicate, and I'm going to make a duplicate that comes down like so. All right, so then I'm going to select this guy again. And when you hold down Alt, you'll make a duplicate. If you just let go of Alt and click, it'll select it and you can move it. Okay, then I'll want his ear here, so I'll select this guy and move out over here for an ear. I want his chin, so I'll go down there. I want his other ear, so I'll go over here. And that's really all that I need of the large ones for his face. The rest of the large ones, and you're going to want about 20 of them, 20 to 25 of these large rectangles on this image. You're just going to, shove them out where you think they look good. So I'm going to move this guy up over to here, over here. Let's get down here, have this guy running off. You basically just want to kind of fill up the image a little bit, more in the center, less on the outsides of the image, just because that seems to look best because it looks more like the center of the image needs more, or whatever the subject of your image is, that should have the most of the large version of these rectangles. When we get to the smaller ones, you can put them just about anywhere, but for the large ones, you want to kind of keep it more towards the subject of your image. Okay, let's go here. That's good. What am I up to? I'm up to 24, 25. We'll go between 25 and 30 of these. Should be plenty. You don't really need all that many of them. I'll put one more right here. There. That looks good. So that should do. This looks a little dead here. You know what? We'll go 30. Well, we will go 30 right here. And that gives me all that I need of these rectangles. So once you have that, you want to select the topmost rectangle layer and then scroll down and grab the bottommost, and you want to select all of them in between. So hold down Shift on the keyboard and then click on the bottommost, and that will select all of them. Then you want to hit Control E on the keyboard to merge them all down into one single layer. And then we want to select all of these rectangles. So you hit Control on the keyboard and then left click on the image thumbnail, and that will make selections. Then you want to select your large layer and you want to make a layer mask. So you just go down here to add layer mask, boom, and you have added a layer mask. Now the reason why you don't see anything at the moment except the black squares is because the black square layer is covering our large layer. So you can get rid of this by throwing it away. And then you have back your image and you have the beginnings of this photo zoom pixelation kind of effect that we're working towards. Okay, so this is the large portion. So you can see the important parts of him. So even if I were to turn off everything else, you could still kind of make out that there is a person there. Okay, so once you have everything in there, it does give it that cool effect. But you want to make these rectangles look like they are actual blocks flying out from this guy's face. So we're going to give them a little bit of layer style. Okay, so we're going to select our layer styles and we're going to do bevel and emboss to begin with. Okay, and our bevel and emboss is going to be as follows. Inner bevel is going to be smooth. It's going to be at 100%. direction is up. Size is going to be 7. Soften is going to be 0. Our angle, remember, always uncheck, use global light. Our angle will be 135 by 50. Gloss contour will be linear. Anti-alias is unchecked. Highlight mode is screen white, which is all Fs. Opacity is 50%. Shadow mode is multiply. It's black. That's all zeros. Opacity 100%. The next thing that we're going to do is give it a little stroke to make it stand out a little bit better from the background. Size is going to be 2, center, normal, opacity 25, overprint is checked, color, and it's going to be all white, which is all Fs. The next thing that we're going to do is we're going to give it an inner shadow here. And that's going to be a screen. It's going to be all white. That's all Fs. Opacity here is going to be at 40. Angle, again, use global light is unchecked, 135. Distance 3. Choke is 0. Size is 6. Linear. Anti-alias unchecked, noise of 10% because we want a little bit of schmutz in there. Okay, the next thing that we're going to do is we're going to give it a drop shadow. Okay, inner shadow, drop shadow, and drop shadow is the last thing that we're doing here. And what we want to do with this is make it look like the large layer is further away from the image than the medium and the small will be. Okay, so we're going to give a blend mode of multiply. The color is black, which is all 0. Opacity here is going to be at 30%. Yes, 30%. Let's go there. Angle is going to be 135, use global light unchecked. Our distance here is going to be 35. Our size here is going to be at 20. Okay, it's going to be linear. Anti-alias is unchecked. Noise 0. Layer knocks out drop shadow. We are now done. And as you can see, these rectangles now look more like they are blocks of an image that are above the image below. Okay, so that's it for large. Now, medium and small are basically the same thing, except we're using smaller blocks in order to do this. So I'm going to run through this really quick to show you how this is done. Okay, so for medium, what we want to do is we want to create a layer on top, layer 1. We're going to turn on medium, and then on layer 1, we're going to start drawing our rectangle. So we're going to select our marquee tool, which is M on the keyboard, feather 0, regular selection, fixed size, and we're going to make the fixed size here is going to be 125, and the height is going to be 350. Okay, so it looks like a smaller version of the larger blocks. Okay, and then we're just going to draw a rectangle here by clicking anywhere in the image. We're going to fill it with our color. We're going to hit Control D to deselect. We're going to hit V in order to select it. And then we have our layer, and we're just going to start throwing this around like so. So here's the first one. Then you hold down Alt, and you can then make the second one. And keep holding Alt, and you will keep making new things. Let go of Alt, and you can move things like so. Okay, so holding down Alt, I'm going to put this guy over here, let's say, and this guy we'll put up here, and we'll do this guy. Now for these, for the medium ones, what you want is about 45 to 50 of them. Okay, that tends to be enough of them to give the image some shape and some depth. Okay, you don't need to go too crazy with these guys. Just fill in the areas that look like they need it. Do that first, and then do some overlapping ones to make the image look a little bit cooler. Okay, that looks pretty good. Actually, we need something over here like that, maybe. Yeah, that looks pretty good. Okay, so we've got what we need here. We'll add in another one here. And how many do I have? I have 44. So yeah, it's a little more than I thought it would be, but you get the idea. It's pretty simple to do this and make it look pretty good. Just make it look good to your eye. All right, the next thing that you're going to do is same thing that we did before. Find the topmost one, click to select it. Go down to the bottom, hold down Shift and click to select all of them. Hit Control E to merge them down. Hold down Control, click on the layer thumbnail to make a giant selection. And then you want to go to your medium layer and you want to make a mask. Then you can get rid of these guys like so, throw it away. And you then have your second layer of rectangles. Then you just want to add in a layer styles of an inner shadow. okay, which is the same as before, which is screen white, opacity 40, angle 135, distance 3, choke 0, size 6, linear, anti-alias is off, noise of 10. And then you want to go to drop shadow. Everything stays the same except for distance and size. So what you want to do here is 18, and the size is going to be 10. Then you got everything else stays the same. You hit OK. And as you can see, the new smaller ones look like they are behind and below the larger rectangles. And there's that. The last thing that we need to do is we need to do our small layer. Now, small is going to be the exact same thing. So let's go back to our marquee, M on the keyboard. We're going to make our width here only 50, and our height here is going to be 700. So we're going to make that 700. And then we're just going to draw, we're going to first show our small. We're going to make a new layer above small, and then we're going to make our, I did this wrong, right? Yes, it should be 50 here. And it should be 700 as height. 700, not 7,000. Then click and draw, you get this nice thin one. Alt, black, hit Control D to deselect, go back to your move tool, and you then have your long, thin rectangle to work with. And then you just start laying this guy out, holding down Alt to make your copies, and you just lay it out. All right, and as you can see, I filled in most of this. Is this too overlapping? No, that's pretty good. Okay, so as you can see, I filled this in pretty nicely with these rectangles. So let's go up to the top here. We'll go down to the bottom and shift and click, and you get them all. Control E, you get them all down. Control and click, and you select them all. Go back to small, make it into a layer mask. Then you select and delete. And you now have your smalls. Then we just want to add in some layer style. So we're going to go with an inner shadow. That stays the same. Drop shadow, everything stays the same except this becomes 10 and 10. Okay, and that's it. We are done. Hit OK, and you now have your cool looking kind of photo zoom pixelation effect in Photoshop. I hope that you enjoyed this tutorial. If you did, please leave me a thumbs up, leave me a comment, and subscribe. I do new tutorials every Tuesday. And once again, this is Geekman signing off for Pixel Magic Tutorials.